Hey guys, welcome back to Go Ministry International podcast. It's a ministry that gets men in, gets them healthy, gets them strong, and sends them back out. And today I have a very special guest with me. He's my friend, Mark Van Mourick. And Mark is going to be talking to us today about something that might make some of us squirm. And that's about tithing. But he's got a wonderful, wonderful story. But before we get to that, Mark, I want to talk to you a little bit about you growing up. Maybe you can share your life with us from zero to maybe when you started Optivest. And the other is...
you don't want 67 years of...
I do. And you know, there's probably guys out there that would love to hear it as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and just share with us a little bit about what happened in your young life.
Okay, thanks. Well, thank you for having me on.
Oh,
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We have known each other for a while.
Yeah, we have.
I did grow up in a nice Christian family, downtown East LA. And my dad had a business where we traveled a lot, and we did educational films, or he did educational films. And so we did a lot of traveling. We took a picture UPS truck converted to a camper, drove that from France all the way to India. It took a year.
Oh my gosh!
Filming all through the Middle East in the 50s.
Is that?
Drove from LA to Panama, and a bunch of long trips. So I missed a lot of school, but it was okay. I had the World Book, and I had two wonderful parents. And their business actually grew pretty good, and eventually was bought out by Doubleday, and we moved to Laguna in like 67, something like that.
So from East LA to Laguna.
Yeah, Emerald Bay at that.
Emerald. Oh my gosh! How old were you at that time?
I was 11 when we moved. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went to school in Laguna, El Moro, and then Thurston and Laguna Beach High School.
Right on.
But tragically, they were coming back from a trip, my folks, and they were killed in a plane crash at Orange County Airport in '68. So they only actually got the fruits of their labor for about a year. So that was tough. My sister was 9 at the time. I was 12. And we bounced around a bit, stayed with both grandparents, ended up with 5 different foster homes over the next 2 years.
Oh, boy.
A couple of them started calling folks mom and dad, and then we got moved again, and usually didn't really know why, but something wasn't working, the dynamics. But we ended up with a nice family, the Ringers, which was my scoutmaster, and I was active in scouts at the time. And they had an older sister and a younger brother, and we kind of fit in right in the middle. So we're 4 of us in the family, all of us adopted. And the Ringers were kind of Quakers, if you will, Bostonians. My dad would, and I'll just call him Dad.
Yeah, of course.
And because I had 2 dads.
Sure.
But I mean, we would to buy a toaster. He would look in the Consumer Reports and find the best one, and then we'd go to Sears and negotiate for the floor model. So he'd try and get 60, 70,000 miles on the tires. Anyway, he was very conservative. Was a different word back then. It was more conserving money and things. But he did teach me quite a bit of principles about money. And what you needs versus wants, and so I grew up in a family that you never touch the principle. That's kind of a Quaker principle, and if anything, you can live off the income, but just keep the base growing.
A couple things. I remember. I'm going to embarrass you, I'm sure, but you were an Eagle Scout, weren't you? I
was an Eagle Scout, and so was my father, and my 2 sons also got Eagle Scouts, and I was a Scoutmaster for 7 years. So scouting was a lot different then, but I really enjoyed the experience, and I still love camping. I went camping Friday with my grandson locally here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I heard that as we grow in our ministry, certain things start to happen, and right now we're getting what we call them the youngers. The youngs are doing beach walk with us, and somebody said, "Hey, we're going to go to Joshua Tree, and we're going to go hiking for a weekend and whatnot." And they said, if any of you guys would like to go and mentor and show up. And next thing you know, I'm hearing that Mark Van Mourick was there, and roping people up and sending them down giant cliffs. Was that what you were doing?
Yeah. Well, I had secured the campsite, and the men's ministry didn't want it, and the young adults did, so it worked out nicely. Yeah, so I've probably taken 25 trips with high schoolers or college kids. It's the first time with older youth.
Wow.
I call 25-year-old and older youth. So I organized the hikes and the rock climbs, and I did quite a bit of mountaineering growing up, and so that's fun for me to train and see some people kind of struggle through some fears and rappelling and such.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty scary. I'm that guy. I can fly. I could probably jump out of a plane, but if I was the guy standing in Seattle at the World's Fair, that big sphere looking down through the plexiglass to the bottom.
Okay, you got that little pucker factor?
The little pucker factor, yeah. Not into that.
I still get that. I look over the edge of a building or something, but I've been up El Cap and all these other mountains, and you look down, and it's a long ways.
I don't know if this happens to you, but to me, if my wife or daughters do that, I want to grab them and pull them back. There's something in me that says, get away. It must be from my father.
It's funny. I asked my wife, there's no feeling down on yonder when they lean over a cliff. You know the feeling I'm talking about? They just don't have the equipment for that feel. I don't know how that works.
That's funny.
That make it cut out. I don't know.
That's really funny stuff. I love that. Well, okay. After the Ringers, what happened? Where did you go? Did you go to college?
That was pretty much my high school years.
Mm-hmm.
Uneventful high school years. I was an average student. I did get into USC, which is a lot easier then than today. And I never moved back home. I had summer jobs. In fact, I've worked since I was a paper boy. I've always had a job, box boy or driver or sporting goods store, dishwasher, right. A bunch of jobs. I worked through SC. And at the end of that's my senior year at SC, I started a little business putting stereos and burglar alarms and mobile phones, which are brand new. This is the late 70s in cars. And so I started that business. It didn't last long. About a year and a half, we sold it to or merged with a company that was making CB radios, but he was making them for $150, and all of a sudden they were being sold for $25, and we went down. But it was good because I got back into the finance business, and that's where my degree was.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You started a company. Let's just fast forward to Optivest. What is the name? How did you get the name Optivest? And let's talk about it.
Sure. I was a trainee at Smith Barney, which is, I don't know if you remember the old commercials, you earn it the old-fashioned way.
I do.
But that was in the late 70s, and I worked my way up. I was pretty mediocre in school, but I turned out to be a pretty good stockbroker. And I rose to the top of the trainings class, and I was on a pretty good trajectory there. But in the training class, I met a guy named David Greenlee, and he had just written a book called Optivest, and it was a stock picking formula. It just means optimum investment.
Oh, okay, got it.
So David and I wrote a newsletter for a while, and then eventually I opened my own company. I left Smith Barney in '87 and started a company named it Optivest.
And it just took off.
The money management company did well. We were pretty traditional stock and bonds, and we were charging a fee, which is an RIA, which is a little different than a stockbroker. It's a little more objective because you are charged a fee instead of a commission. Eventually, though, if you think about it, there's only three ways to invest your money. You can lend it. You can lend it to a bank or a company or a municipality as a bond, or you can invest it in a private or public business, or you can invest it in equity of real estate. And that's really it. And nobody made a lot of money lending, so we stuck to the other two, investing in public and private businesses and real estate. And so we started syndicating some real estate deals.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about not only was it successful and you sold it for quite a bit of money, but we're going to talk about tithing, something that guys, when you talk about the pucker factor, there are some men out there that go, I don't think I can give 10% of my net, much less my gross.
Yeah, it's hard if you start late in your career. It just is. I was probably 35 or so, and I got challenged at church, and the pastor gave an interesting challenge. He said, if you're not tithing, we challenge you to tithe this year. Doesn't have to be all to us. But at the end of the year, if whatever you've tithed to us, if you don't feel your life's better off, we'll give it back. And it's kind of a bold challenge. And so
from a pastor, yeah.
From a pastor, yeah, from the front. So my wife and I decided to step up. And this is not a prosperity ministry, but it's going to sound a little bit like that. And if you look under Malachi in 3:10, it is very clear God says He will bless you if you don't withhold your tithes and offerings. So your storehouses will be overflowing.
Yeah.
So at the end of that year, the 90% we had left over was bigger than the 100% we had the year before, and so we kept going. And we opened up a separate checking account, and we just called it God's account. That's the name of the account, checking account. So every time we got a paycheck, I would put 10% into that account. And so we would give money away, but when we gave it away, it wasn't like I was deciding, are we going to take a vacation or are we going to give the money away? It was already set aside. So it's just who we're going to give it to. It's not how much. I joined Convene. You're familiar with Convene?
Yeah.
It's a Christian CEO group.
Yes.
And I got challenged in there. Things were going well to bump that to 15.
15%.
15%.
Of the net of the gross?
I was giving at the net at the time, but we started giving 15 of the gross.
Wow.
And then years later, I got challenged to push that to 20. And then in 2007, I brought in my real estate partner, Warren, and we started the syndicating real estate deals in self-storage. Mm-hmm. And we decided we would change things around and give 10% of the gross of the money management business and 10% of the gross of the property management business in anything we did going forward. And that was a big commitment because in some
20%.
No, 10% of the gross of the business. That's before paychecks, rent, anything.
Wow, that's huge.
It's not 10% of my gross income. It was of the whole business.
Understood.
Yeah,
it's bigger.
So sometimes that was half the income. So we kind of went from 10 to 15 to 20 to half. But again, God continued to bless our business, and things went really well after that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've actually heard Pastor Rick Warren once state that, I live on 10% of my income. The reason I know that is I started at a 10% of a tithe, then I went to 20, then to 30, 40, all the way up to 90%. And he says, I just can't outgive God. He's still blessing, and I'm living very, very comfortably with just 10%.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been challenged to do that. And if I made Rick Warren's money from his book, I would probably adopt that too. But it's been good, and we put it into a foundation. We had a family foundation. That checkbook ended up moving into a family foundation in the 90s, and then we renamed it Optivest Foundation in was it 2007 when Warren came in, and it grew. We've got a book back here that talks about year by year the ministries that we gave to, and with this big hairy audacious goal.
Right.
Of giving away $10 million. And at the start of it, it looked like it would take 57 years. So we would have to definitely grow. And we finally accomplished that in 17 years, a year ago.
Wow.
And so we had a little celebration. We all went on a little retreat to celebrate that. But it's been a super experience. Most of our money is given away overseas where it goes a lot further. And we visited a lot of the ministries and continue to do that.
Get more bang for your buck there.
We do.
Absolutely. By the way, thank you for the use of this foundation. You've donated this graciously to Go Ministry. And I remember the first day you walked with, you said, hey, if you got any time, I'd like to walk you through it. This building I'm building. Build out. Okay. And so we walked, and you showed me this beautiful center that you've built. I think you were just drywalling. They were going to be laying down flooring, it was not quite there yet. And you said, we're going to donate this to ministries.
And it was during COVID, so building a gathering place
exactly
during COVID was kind of wild.
Right. You said, here's the prayer room, and my daughter painted these photos, and I've got these paintings, not photos. And just all I could say was, how lucky are those ministries? And you said, well, yeah, you're one of them. And I've never forgotten that. And I want to thank you for
you're welcome.
Donating.
We're glad that you're using it, and we've got maybe a dozen ministries use it a week. It's been fun.
I love that. That's awesome. So what are you doing today? Tell me all about what you're doing today.
Well, life takes turns.
Yes, it does.
And the fun part of what I get to do today is give back and be active in the ministries that we have. We only have one that we're doing on our own. That's Madagascar.
Okay.
The rest of them, there's about a dozen that we're involved in. Like Go Ministry, they're organizations that we come alongside and support. But instead of building, helping my family with financially, they're taken care of. But now we're helping others and coming alongside ministries, and they have to have a twofer for us. It can't be just passing out Bibles and saying goodbye and ignoring their plight, and it can't be pure aid. It can't be just helping them live longer and more comfortably and not going to heaven. It's got to do both. And there's plenty of organizations on either side, and we focus on the middle. So that's what we've been focusing on. So I do that. I'm enjoying being a grandpa to my 4 kids, my 4 grandkids. I got 3 children. Yep. Tragically, though, my youngest son, unmarried, was hurt badly in a car accident about 3 years ago. So
Andrew.
Andrew is. He was in the hospital for about 7 months. Almost died a number of times, and I don't want to start crying. I will go into the details, but he is better. He is getting better, but the steroids they gave him for his brain aneurysms, his brain is fine now, but they're dissolving his joints. So he's had
so they're dissolving his joints.
Yeah. So his right hip's been replaced. His left hip's hurting. He needs those replaced before they can replace his shoulders, but his knees and elbows or ankles, everything's going. So he's 35 and he's in a lot of pain. His liver's damaged, so he can't take much pain meds. So he's not happy. And so a lot of my day is spent hanging out with him and trying to get him to PT and running to doctors and such. But he'll pull through. He is a man of faith. He knows he was saved for 2.0, but he's still got a long ways to go.
Yes. I bought an electric bike from him. I remember when he was in that business.
That's right.
And I bought one from him, and I want to say about a month later, you called me and said, pray for Andrew, and you had told me what had happened. And, it's really a miracle that he lived, and he is 2.0. He's living on, what's the word I used to call my father-in-law? He had a widowmaker heart attack, and I said, hey, you're on not overtime, but double overtime, okay? And he said, boy, I'm going to live it for Jesus, Phil. And he sure did. And I'm so glad to hear that Andrew loves Jesus.
Yeah, for sure. And he prays so earnestly. The other day, he had this earnest prayer before we ate, and I complimented on it. And he gave me a dirty look. He says, that wasn't for you, Dad. But that's what you want to hear. I mean, he wasn't showing off to me. He was honestly in an earnest prayer with the Lord.
Yeah, isn't that
was
cool?
Sweet.
Oh,
yeah. Man,
you did a good job there. Way to go. I love that.
The other thing that's been good, particularly my oldest son, that the tithing rubbed off on him. And I can remember he was doing his first budget. He wanted to tithe 10% and save 10% and live on the 80. And he didn't have enough money for internet or cable. He said, so we're going to do without. And eventually they did get those, but it was just interesting, his discipline. And it's fun. I overheard him and his wife the other day talk about how they're going to bless a family with some scholarships for something that was a retreat or something happening at their church. Yeah. But it's so fun, particularly if you've got ministries that you see the end recipients, and you can kind of see the joy that you're giving, and mostly it's anonymous. It's kind of fun to sit back and watch that happen.
You're truly a kingdom builder, both you and Warren. There are young men watching that are going, oh my gosh, I finally made it to $100,000 a year, and I get $8,000 a month. He's talking about the gross. That would be $800 after taxes. I'm bringing home maybe $5,500. $800 of that is going to leave me with $4,700. That's almost half my rent. What do you say to those guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's not what I say. But I would say,
well said.
I would say creep up on it, and and I think,
give me an example.
God wants a cheerful giver. He doesn't want you to do it out of obligation and not get any joy from it. So I would say start small.
Example.
But I would give something that does stretch you. I mean, start with 3%.
Okay.
And then move up to 5%. But the idea is that as your lifestyle increases, as your income increases, I would say step up your tithing alongside your lifestyle. So, maybe the next lease you get or your car, maybe you get a lesser car and it's $600 a month instead of $800 a month, and the other $200 goes to ministry. You can step it up slowly, and I would kind of stair step it, and hopefully you'll hit 10 in a while. And I chose to go above that, and I've been blessed by it, but I'm not challenging anybody else to do that. That's up to them.
Understood.
But I do think that 10% is a number that is obtainable, and you can decide whether it's net or gross. I had somebody say, "Do you want to be blessed on your net, or you want to be blessed on your on your gross?" But don't get the number. I would just say increase and step it up, and I would also say get involved in the ministries that you're going. Follow your money. Get involved, see where it goes, see the blessings, and if it's not used well, move on.
Yeah.
We don't give it all to the church. What we do give to the church, though, is what an executive income would tithe off of.
Okay.
And then the rest of it goes to our foundation.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Is it looks like you're salting it, different areas. It's not just all in one area. So you're basically saying, hey, give to the church what the church deserves. Or in your mind, what?
Yeah. So I mean, for us, we're blessed with a lot that I could give a tithe on a $250,000 kind of thing to the church, and still have abundance left over for other ministries. That's just us. If I was having to tithe off a normal salary, I probably would do at least half, probably to the local church, but that's a decision each person has to make. Right. But I would get involved, even if it's in your local church, in some of the outreach ministries or such, to see where the money's going.
Men sometimes ask me, how do you give, Phil? I mean, and I said, well, there's several ways, but what you don't want to do is when they pass the hat or pass the collection box, you pull out a 5 or a 10 and you drop it in. You think you're doing a great job. I mean, you're tipping God, and it's a really small tip at that.
I can remember the first $100 I gave at a church, and they're building a fellowship hall or something, and I waited around for weeks for the thank you letter. I was,
that's a good one.
I didn't get it, but it. Really, once we've gotten involved in these ministries and we see how the money's being used and how the lives are changed, I mean, you just can't help but keep giving.
Yeah. And you're going to see some people that just, I don't want to say thankless, but here's the thing. Let me just put it in complete perspective. I was walking one day, and I don't know why, this man who had vomit on his beard, he smelled of urine. He was laying in the corner without any shoes on. He was filthy. And he looked up at me, and I don't know why, but I felt compelled to give him something. Okay, this isn't a tithe. This is just a gift, okay, to someone. And that's just an analogy. So I don't know, it was $10, $20. I handed it to him. This was like 20, 30 years ago, which I guess that was a lot of money to my buddy, who looked at me and said, he's just going to go buy alcohol with it. Okay, he's just going to go buy drugs with it. What I told him to do is go buy some flip-flops with it and do whatever he wanted with the rest. My point is that I didn't give it to him for you to judge me. I gave it to him out of the goodness of my heart for God to see, to know this is what I'm doing for.
We're called to give
the least of these,
and to be generous.
Well, the next day I walked by, and you know what he was wearing? A pair of flip-flops.
Awesome.
It was cool. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and it's not up to us how, to control how that man spent it.
Mm-mm.
But I think God, the giving is to changing our hearts.
Amen.
And I think that's done. And
that's the whole purpose.
We keep a little bit of money in the car and such. But I think it's better to take them to food, buy them some food.
Yeah.
Or my wife's got a little kit in there. It has toothbrush and socks and that sort of thing you can give. Sometimes we meet the homeless a couple times a year down at Doheny Beach and pass out gifts on Christmas, Thanksgiving, that sort of thing.
Well, I walked to a restaurant. It was near the, South Coast Plaza, and I saw this look like a homeless woman just staring at the menu. And I said, "Are you hungry?" She said, "Very hungry." I said, "Do you have any money?" She said, "No." I said, "Order whatever you like." And she looked at me like, "Really?" "Yeah, really. Whatever you want." I didn't care if it was $50, right? I mean, what was it going to cost me? 20, $30? She started crying. And no one had ever done that for her before. And I said, order not just one, but order two, and order a drink, and order dessert. And I would hope that that people understand that God is that lavish with us.
Paying it forward, yeah.
And the other thing is that when I talk to men about tithing, and this is your show, not mine, and that's it, give him your first fruits, okay? Don't tip him. But the second we get that check, with a glad heart, give.
Yeah, and I'd suggest giving it to some sort of an account, a donor advisor fund, a checkbook, a foundation, something. So you set it aside as it comes in, and then you and your wife, if you're married, can sit down and talk about how to give it.
Well, plus it can grow, possibly, right? I mean,
yeah, and you can save it up for something big if you wanted to donate something larger. But it's nice to have a pool of money that you can grab from when opportunities come up. And I'm kind of a sucker for this, and I don't share this with many people, but I pay attention to opportunities that are put in front of me. Mm-hmm. So we seem like we're inundated sometimes, but we really aren't with too many things. So I pay attention when ministry opportunities come to my way, and I try and be responsive. It may be varying amounts, but I try and listen. And not ignore what's being put in front of me.
Oh, I love that. So I'm hearing that good things are happening. You're transferring companies. You're moving shares from one company to another.
Our real estate company did go public.
Okay.
And in 2015, and things scooted from there. But we also owned a couple of private businesses still, and those businesses are what we've tithed off from here. Those are now being bought by the public company. And so it's going to be different in the future. The foundation is not going to be funded from the 10% of the gross anymore. Okay. I'm going to donate a bunch of the stock into the foundation, and the foundation will take its time to give that away. So it's transitioning to another season. But it's going to sunset, ideally when Trish and I both die at the same time in 30 years. But I do believe.
So when you mean sunset, you're saying it'll be exhausted.
Yes, I'm not leaving it for anybody else to
anyone
give
else.
It. No, and my kids I believe they should earn their own money and give their own money away, and the dollar amount isn't as important as their heart, and that they are obedient and they are cheerful givers, and that's their own journey. Our journey will end with us. There'll be a lot of ministries that'll be blessed, but that's how we decided to do it. And there's other people that my partner Warren, for instance, he's got a foundation too, and he's getting his kids involved on the board, and that foundation will continue beyond him with his kids running it. So everybody's got a little different journey.
Well, I honor you for doing that. You are a kingdom builder, and we're talking about stuff. We talked with Zach, the very first podcast, about pornography. Okay, that was, ooh, dude, how could you? That's a tough one right out the chute, talking about pornography. This is not like pornography, but this is also something that's near and dear to men's hearts. It's money. And giving money away is the antithesis of what they want to do. And I guess I'll leave you with a final question, final answer. When you're giving your money away, you're giving it to who? Who are you in your mind giving it to?
I'm hoping to build a kingdom and do the work of Jesus. But I'm also hoping to see some of these people in heaven that maybe we wouldn't otherwise. And again, if they're more comfortable and live longer, and they don't get to heaven, it was a bit wasted. So we also hope that their lives are changed. Sometimes we send people on mission trips and such, and their lives are changed forever. So hopefully it's a little multiplying, and so like you're doing with your men's ministry, spreading it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. We took some funds and we donated for a young man to go take a mission trip in, I want to say Paraguay, Peru. So it was Peru. And he came running to me at the end of the beach walk and showed me a phone that he had. He goes, "Look, Phil, look, I want you to see this." And somebody had just texted him saying there was a man praying at the riverbank for a Bible. And as he looked up, what came floating down the river was no cover on the front, no cover on the back, but it was a Bible completely. And he just picked it up and he showed it was soaking wet. In the video, it's a picture of him picking it up, showing it. And I'm thinking, things like that happen in other countries. But more importantly, we were able to send that young man to Peru for 6 months to talk to the indigenous tribes.
And there are unreached people groups.
Right. And bring them to Jesus, perform miracles, etc., and come back on fire for Jesus. And I tell you what, I caught fire again.
Yeah.
Listening to him.
And you're right. And that's how we get blessed.
Amen. Well, it's an honor knowing you, and I want to thank you, Mark, for everything you're doing for all the ministries that you're involved with, but certainly just being the man that you are.
Well, thank you, Phil. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the years.
If you like what you hear or what you see, click that subscribe button at the bottom, and all it will do is just advise you when there's another podcast. So we look forward to having you join.